Okay, welcome back, and this is video number 2 in our 3-part series on how to become a better putter. And in video number 2, it's all about the putting stroke itself, creating an effective, repeatable stroke that will work for you under pressure. So let's get right into it. Okay, so a little review in video number 1, all about the setup and how to set up correctly with the right grip and stance, putter fitting, all the things that will help you set up for success. And now in video number 2, it's all about the stroke itself and really which type of stroke that you want to create to become a really effective putter. And historically, the way we've taught golf, there's really been a couple of ways to putt. This sort of the pendulum style, which has been taught for years and years and years, and then sort of a different style of putting, which is really more popular on tour now. And it's been used for years, but it's been less popular in terms of teaching. Out in the teaching world, golf magazines and videos and things you might see don't always talk about this other type of putting or style, but trust me, it's really the most popular style on tour and the one that the best putters have always used to be really effective, especially in those money putts, you know, sort of inside 10 feet to really make those clutch putts under pressure. So let's talk about the two different types. And really there's a pendulum stroke, which is really just sort of the idea that you lock in your hands and arms and just move the putter with your shoulders. So it's very much of a rocking sort of motion. So the idea that you can control the entire stroke using the shoulders, but not a lot of hands, and really trying to eliminate wrist action. And when you work with beginners, you do see sometimes there's a lot of wristiness going on with beginners. And so sometimes in like a group class setting, working with a pendulum style stroke, not the worst idea in the world. If I'm trying to teach 10 people at once and they're all beginners, getting them to set up with a good posture and grip and then sort of rock it back and forth, not a bad idea. Certainly for putting really short putts, 2, 3, 4 footers, because that putter goes back and through and the wrists are, there's less in play there. But it becomes pretty one-dimensional at some point, and as you back up and get further from the cup, it becomes sort of a blocky, mechanical, sort of wooden stroke. And it also becomes a giant stroke because to hit the ball farther, you start to get this huge pendulum motion going and the body starts to rock and the head moves. And there's a lot of stuff going on there that makes it very difficult to feel sort of athletic and free and like there's something natural about it. So instead of just using a pendulum, which it's possible you can do a pendulum stroke, and for that type of stroke, like you said, it's the same grip and stance, but it's just locking everything in together, no movement in the elbows, no movement in the wrists, everything working together. But like you said, chances are there's going to start to be some excessive body motion. So instead, let's talk a little bit more about the more current way players putt really well on tour and how some great putters like Dave Stockton and some other guys have influenced this current way of putting. Okay, before we get into this idea of how to create a more modern type of stroke, or certainly the stroke that's more popular in the current players on tour, let's cover our bases here for this idea of putting in a straight line or putting on an arc, because I think it's very confusing for some players to try to figure out, are they supposed to go in a straight line or in an arc? Well, it's my belief that anytime you stand to the side of an object, just like you do for hitting a golf ball, that once I'm to the side of it and my target is over here, that naturally creates an arcing type of motion. Now, granted, with a putter, it's a very, very slight arc, but it is a slight arc. If you were to stand sort of side saddle or the old school, like straddle the line, or if you had a putter that was dead vertical, if it was indeed vertical, you could start to move that in a straight line. But because almost everybody out there has a putter that has some lie angle in the neighborhood of 70 to 75 degrees, that naturally will create a slight arcing motion. And I think you'll find if you just buy into that and let the club swing in a gradual arc, it just swings easier and freer. The physics tends to work much better than if you're trying to control it on a straight line. For any of you that have tried to control your putter and move it on a dead straight line, I think you found that the putter itself starts to wander outside like this and actually starts to work in a U shape, because your eyes are a little bit confused as to what straight actually is. And what feels sometimes, or certainly looks like a very slight arc, when you ask somebody, they might even say they swing that putter on a straight line, but when you video it, it is on a very, very slight arc. And I think it's important just to know that, okay, it's on an arc, let's be done with that and then move on. Okay, so we've covered the bases on the arc or straight line concept, and now let's talk about the stroke itself and what does make a great sort of putting stroke work under pressure versus guys that tend to struggle a little bit. If we really give a nice shout out to Dave Stockton and Stan Utley and some of the other great putting gurus that are current, we'll find that they've really unlocked some of the keys to putting over the last 10 years that were really hidden for a long time. If you look back at history, Jack Nicklaus used to seek Dave Stockton's advice on putting, as did a lot of other guys. And then Stan Utley, while he was still out on tour, he was such an amazing putter that a lot of guys on tour started asking him for help. And he then started sharing his knowledge, then wrote the book, and that really allowed for some amazing information to start traveling around the golf community and helped a lot of teachers teach better and a lot of putters become much better over the last few years. And if we look at the actual stroke itself, you'll see it's quite a bit different from this pendulum style. Okay, let's go through the mechanics a little bit of the putting stroke that I believe will really help you become a better putter. It's transformed my own putting. I mean, I was a very mediocre putter most of my life, certainly high school and college, very mediocre. If you ask my teammates, they'll tell you. But once I learned some of these basics from Stan Utley, from Dave Stockton, it was amazing what happened to my putting. And really it comes down to understanding just how this thing can function to roll the ball down the line time after time and eliminate that miss to the left. And one thing that's just so important for you to know is it is possible to really eliminate one side of the miss. You can stop missing left. Now you might miss it to the right now and then, but if you can start getting the ball down your line and missing only to the right, it becomes very easy to be sort of confident in knowing that you can just be aggressive and roll the ball in there. If you don't know if you're going to miss it left or right, you're a little bit tentative all the time, you're decelerating, you feel like your distance control is off, it's very hard to be a confident, aggressive putter, and you'll find the ball, your distance control is always out of whack, and of course then your actual line on these short putts, it's very hard to get the ball on line because you're so tentative. So what we want to show you right now is if the putter handle itself, if the top of the grip can keep moving through impact, you'll be a more successful putter. If the top of the grip starts to back up or go back the other way, you'll be less successful. As the putter grip starts to back up for whatever reason, which we'll go over some reasons here in a minute, but for whatever reason, if the handle backs up, the putter face is going to close and swing upward, and that starts to hit a ball off to the left and hit the ball off the sort of the bottom of the club face. It's a very thin and non-solid strike. So as the handle starts to continue to move forward, however, that's what really hits the center or the sweet spot, drives the ball right down your target line and puts a true roll on the ball. Now, as we talked about in one of the earlier segments, a pendulum stroke really doesn't have that type of a movement. A pendulum is going to be one more or sort of a rocking type of motion. Putter comes up in the air, back down and back up again. And it's more likely that the top of the grip will slow down with a pendulum style compared to a style where you're actually moving the handle through. Now, in order to move the handle through, you are going to have to do something that people say you shouldn't do, which is maybe have your hands a little lighter and looser so your wrists can actually move slightly. We don't want to have your wrists frozen and have everything frozen and very rocking and blocky and wooden. We want to have some flow in there. And so one drill that I have players do is make sure they can use one hand at a time and literally push the handle forward, which keeps it moving and keeps the face from closing. You can do it right-handed or left-handed, or if you happen to be a left-handed putter, switch that around, but you can learn to move this handle through. Now, as I do that, watch what I'm doing. There's a little bit of wrist play there and a little bit of a push forward. Totally fine. I'm just using the putter in a slightly different way than the old pendulum style in order to make sure that that handle stays slightly forward and that the grip and the putter face keep moving together when I'm striking that ball. The last thing I want to do is have the club head suddenly accelerating underneath the club handle, which increases the speed and throws my distance control off. I want to be able to move the handle through at about the same rate and position relative to the club head. Okay, now for a little demonstration, I'm going to hit a few putts with the drill and also two-handed, and we're going to see if we can keep that ball, if anything, not going left. We're going to try to hit it dead straight or slightly to the right. If we can teach you to hit it to the right, that will mean the handle is staying in front, which will eliminate the left miss, the decel, all those kind of things. So first of all, with the one-handed drill, if I get the club moving forward through this way, the face will not close. Flip out on the right side, that's fine. There's my right miss. That's what I'm looking for the drill. At first, do not miss it left, do not slow that handle down. Keep that grip moving. And there's my finished position. A lot of angle here. You can see the grip way out in front. It isn't the old, that type of look there, moving it forward. That drill can also be done with the left hand only. Same thing, move the handle forward. And that kind of a finished position for the drill. And you can see that just drives the ball right down the target line. No left misses. So here's a great example of Tiger Woods working on that one-handed drill. You can see there the putter head and the handle stopping together. If he happens to miss left, if you notice, he'll like exaggerate pushing that handle through just a little farther, so like the palm of his right hand and the grip itself pushing through, and this angle still holding very solid into that finished position for that one-handed drill. Now out on the tour, you see a lot of different styles of grips or the way the pros actually grip the putter. You do see the classical reverse overlap like this. Stan Utley certainly uses that one. A lot of the great putters use that, Tiger Woods, that kind of a putting stroke, or putting grip rather. But a lot of guys grip it different ways, and if you watch the way they grip it, the claw, left hand low, whatever it might be, it's to keep that handle in front. Left hand low is the one I would suggest for almost everyone. Last week, 4 of the top 6 finishers had the left hand low grip, 1 had the claw. So let's take a look at that. With the left hand low, it automatically creates this angle with my back wrist and more of a bow with the front wrist. And so that stroke naturally moves the handle through easier than this one. If I do the left hand low and I break my wrist down, that feels very awkward with a left hand low grip, and that's why you don't see that very often on TV. So with a left hand low grip, it's almost a drill you could do if you're a conventional player, or a conventional gripper rather, to keep that grip moving. But if you've never really experimented with a left hand low grip, I would highly recommend trying it. It is one of the best ways to do it. If I try to create the right miss, drive the handle out in front, that one still went in the right edge just because I just tried to push that handle so far in front. Another tour pro, Jordan Spieth, working on his putting at one of the Masters tournaments, and you can see there the putter head moving pretty early. He's a left-hand low player, of course, and so at this point he has established this sort of angle here, and as he comes through, really see that exaggeration of that angle holding its position there. Wouldn't be a classic pendulum style. A pendulum style, the arms would be in a little different position, and the putter would have swung much farther way out into this point, maybe not quite that far, about there, to keep that triangle looking like it's intact and everything in sync. Another great example here, Webb Simpson, he uses a modified claw grip. You can see how the left wrist looks nice and arched there, and as he comes through, you can just see everything just stops so abruptly. That handle and the club head lined up at that point, no massive follow through, and that ball just running right into the hole. He's a fantastic putter. If you get a chance to watch him on TV one of these days, take a look. He really does have the feel for getting that handle moving through, keeping this angle. If it's a super long putt, of course, they will let that wrist break a little bit on the way through, but pretty much inside 15, 20 feet, you won't see that breaking down hardly at all. One more view of Webb Simpson from the back here, and you'd expect to see, and the hole is over here, you'd expect to see that putter swinging through, maybe over into here somewhere in the old days. You can see where that thing stops right there. The wrists are not breaking free on the way through. So the grip, top of the grip and the putter head going the same speed at impact. And that's probably a bit shocking for some people to see if you haven't noticed it before. That really is the modern way of putting. And like I said in one of the other clips here in the video, thanks to Dave Stockton and Stan Utley for really helping us understand how some of these things can work, and of course some other great putters as well, but those are two that really come to mind who have helped the world of golf and golf instructors become better at teaching putting. Okay, so just for a minute, let's talk a little bit about why this stroke also is better for distance control. And like we said with the pendulum style, where the club head tends to swing under your hands and go past the grip end quickly, that can lead to distance control problems, because if I have the club head accelerating too quickly, I tend to get the one that goes flying by the hole on the second hole of the day, and then from the rest of the day I'm sort of defensive. Now I'm coming up short, and then I'm long, and I'm short, and I'm long, because it's hard to control that acceleration. But when I have this putter moving, so the handle keeps moving, and the club head and the handle are closer in speed, I get much more control. So I'm going to hit these 5 putts here in a row, and my goal is just sort of just get them right up to the front of this hole. If they go in, that's fine, but I'm going to see what I can do to really exaggerate that look for the video, to keep that handle moving so I don't get any wild acceleration coming through. If these come up slightly short, that's fine, but I do want to make sure that the video looks like I'm really exaggerating that look of keeping the handle moving, but the head not flying through. And this is the look you'll see on tour. You'll see it with lots of players when they come through. It doesn't have this wild, giant swing you used to see back in the 80s and 90s. Much more controlled. And you can see overall my speed control, very tight grouping, and I can tell it's in control. I don't feel the wrists unloading or snapping through, and I can be very aggressive. I can move the handle actually pretty aggressively because I know the head's not going to snap and create a lot of excessive speed. One of the key questions that people do ask a lot when it comes to putting is what moves the putter? Should it be shoulders? Should it be arms? Should it be hands? What is actually moving this putter? And I think that's a really good question, something you want to really settle in your own mind, what's moving that putter. And even though in most putting strokes you'll see everything moving, you're going to see shoulders, you're going to see arms, hands, putter. The driving force behind that can be a little bit different for each player. I think the old pendulum style, certainly the shoulders completely driving that motion. But with more of this handle forward or moving the handle through type of style, I hear a lot of different things from players. Certainly Dave Stockton talks a lot about moving the putter back with his left hand with a little bit of movement in the wrist, and then bringing it through maybe with the right hand pushing. Other players said they do feel like the arms are swinging sort of from the shoulder sockets. Even though you see the shoulders moving, they don't necessarily try to move the shoulders. The shoulders are sort of responding to this feeling of the arms moving. And for myself, I definitely get the feeling that if I can create a tiny bit of wrist action in the takeaway and then move that handle forward on the way through, that gives me the best feel. Once again, I don't like this idea or feeling of sort of dragging the whole thing back with this shouldery action. That feels very unathletic to me and very frozen. So I would suggest creating a tiny bit of movement, getting the club head moving barely with this front hand. It's a very tiny movement in the wrist, extremely small. It's not a flipping or anything. And then when you come through, there's a tiny push with the backhand, which keeps that handle moving forward. And so the mechanics of that stroke create a freer movement where the club head is free to move, and you're really encouraged to grip the club very lightly that way. And one thing you'll see with almost all of the putting gurus out there that teach a lot of putting, they're always loosening up people's elbows, loosening their wrists, their grip, fingers, hands, to keep things flowing and loose. And bad putters, just as a group, just hang on tight for dear life when they're gripping it tight, trying to control it. and that's what tends to throw the stroke off. So when a great putting teacher works with someone who's struggling with their putting, they're going to get everything looser and flowing so that this putter actually can come back into impact in the right angle and work more naturally to strike the sweet spot, to really get the strike right on the ball, and also just so that they don't have to have so much excessive body motion, which tends to throw off your distance control anyway. An additional benefit of this type of putting stroke where the hands are moving the handle forward through is that the putter head, as it's coming into the ball, tends to go more along the ground a little bit longer this way, which gives you more solid contact in the middle than one that happens to be swinging up, down, and up. And if you create that up, down, and up motion too much, you tend to have a perfect sort of low point of your arc to catch that ball just right as the putter comes down. But since this putter handle is moving more forward or along the ground, or along the target line rather, the putter head itself tends to stay more along the ground a little bit longer, makes it much more likely you'll catch the sweet spot and have solid contact in the ball instead of having that sort of swinging up and down motion, which is great for hitting an iron, but for having a putting type of stroke where you're trying to get that ball rolling quickly, just not very effective. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for video number 2, creating an effective and repeatable putting stroke. If it's your first time to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.